I was the most pessimistic going into it. I was prepared to have to come up with a whole new thing we were going to do. We only went in this research just trying to see if the sites could be optimized for AI search. We did not have in our mind any even semblance of an idea of what it looked like if when they were. Third-party research does seem to point that they call these retrieval augmented generation systems, or they call them RAG. These RAG systems seem to all work in a similar way, even if the platforms aren't giving their crawlers different names, like OpenAI is kind enough to do. It does look like they all tend to visit the site to verify information before they recommend it.
All right. So Duda study finds AI optimized websites drive 320% more traffic to local businesses. That's a Duda press release. Then another headline, 68 million AI crawler visits show what drives AI search visibility. Subheadline, research on 68 million AI crawler visits show clear patterns that drive better AI search performance to business sites. That article was written by Roger Monti in Search Engine Journal. I have the author of this study here with me. Hey, Shawn, I'm going to let you talk here in a second. Let me quickly do the proper intro for this podcast, and I'm super excited about this conversation. We're actually going to make this a two-part series. So definitely stay tuned. We have too much to talk about. So, hey, everyone, welcome to the AI SEO Insider podcast. I'm Chris Raulf, an AI SEO expert and the founder of Boulder SEO Marketing. Incidentally, we help local service businesses and also other businesses show up in AI search. So this is a very relevant topic that we're going to discuss here today in this podcast. In this podcast, or in all of our podcasts, we cut through the AI hype, and this is where I talk to people who are getting real results and share incredible information. So that being said, my guest today is Shawn Davis, Head of Content and Communications at Duda. Shawn just published one of the most rigorous pieces of AEO, answer engine optimization research I've seen anywhere in the industry. And I've been doing this from the very beginning. So his team analyzed a ton of paid websites. I'm going to let you talk more about specific numbers here. Against nearly 70 million AI crawler visits in a single month. And what they found should be on the desk of every agency owner and every local business owner right now. I'm talking 3.2 times more human traffic, 2.7 times more form submissions, 2.5 times more click-to-call events on AI crawled sites versus sites the AI engines ignore. So this is not a vendor pitch. This is statistical analysis on a 1 million site data set. And Shawn designed the questions and wrote the paper. Shawn, who in the world are you?
Thanks for having me, Chris. Yeah, well, you kind of nailed it. I do content and communications at Duda. I worked with our incredible team, both our product marketers and our business intelligence team, to look at a subsection of, and you hinted at this number, 858,000 paid websites, specifically for the month of February 2026. And we did some restrictions on those sites. So there's sites that have been around for at least a little while, have received at least some traffic. But yeah, we wanted a nice big chunk of sites to talk about. And my job is just to talk to agencies and talk to those people building websites for SMBs and get them useful information.
Awesome. And by the way, the two headlines that I mentioned earlier, I'm going to put links to the documents right below in the description field of this YouTube video, as well the link to where you can get access to the research. Definitely well worth it. Also, funny thing, both Shawn and I were just outside Boulder, Colorado. I'm in Superior, and Shawn usually across the beach in Louisville. we could have done this in person, but an old dog doesn't change habits. I like to do it in front of my computer here. Maybe, hopefully, we'll actually get to meet in person and maybe even catch a beer or a coffee. All right, let's get into this. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I put together a lot of questions and I went over those questions. I just realized I think it's too much for one session. So Shawn agreed to do a 2-part podcast session series with me. So we're going to tackle 3 of the sections and then we're going to record the second part next week. Let's get into it. So section 1, I want to talk about why this research got built in the first place. So let's talk about the origin story of the study, why no one was talking about AEO for SMBs, and the moment, Shawn, you realized there was a gap. So first question. Shawn, you told me the trigger for this whole project was a white spark stat that 68% of local searches now contain an AI overview. AI overviews kill traffic to websites. Walk us through that moment. What did you see and why did it stop you cold?
Yeah. Yeah, that number kind of stopped us in our tracks. You're right. I'm going to be preaching to the choir here, but for local businesses, those kind of local searches are everything. Like that's a huge lead pipeline, especially for particular types of SMBs, maybe home services providers, for example. They depend on some urgency for a lot of leads, and local search is where that urgency happens. So it's very important for them. We had already internally started thinking about how AI search is impacting SMBs, and we'd been tracking some numbers internally, and so we knew vaguely that, hey, ChatGPT is referring a lot more traffic to the sites built on Duda than before, and these crawlers are visiting the sites built on Duda a lot more often than they used to. And so we were already starting to wonder, is there something that distinguishes sites that are receiving this traffic versus those that aren't? But that is too big of a question to answer. We have too many websites. We can't just go and be like, what's different here? And so it's actually my CMO who proposed thinking about the local angle, right? Because that is what so many SMBs care about. From there, stumbling across that white spark statistic was very easy. It was pretty much the first thing I found when I started to look at how AI might be impacting local businesses. And like you said, stopped cold. That's when we knew something had to be going on. There's no way that sites are being recommended by these AI overviews without having something unique about them.
And so we're a small boutique agency, Boulder SEO Marketing, about 50 clients. I do all of the sales calls, right? A lot of local businesses are struggling with what's going on with AI out there. So here's what I find fascinating. The entire AEO conversation up until your study has been enterprise focused, right? You rarely ever hear about SMBs. Press releases, PR agencies, 6-figure software contracts. Why has the SMB and agency layer been completely missing from discussion up to now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is really common just across any kind of technological transformation, right? It's going to come to the big players first, and then it's going to, for lack of better words, kind of trickle down to the SMB. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it's money. Enterprises can throw more money at the problem when they see the numbers start to come down. They can do it. But I think a bigger one is time. SMBs they do not have marketing departments. My title, for example, would not exist at many small businesses. They do not have someone whose job is to do like anything organic, outside of maybe one person that does all marketing, or likely an agency. And for agencies, they have many clients. And so this is coming to a sense of where can we afford to put resources? And I just don't think up until this point, because no one had looked into it, that the evidence was there that this was worth resources, right? That there was going to be any kind of ROI, that there was going to be any kind of value in focusing on this, especially, as you pointed out, when these local businesses are already starting to struggle. They need to, in these moments, put their resources where they can guarantee leads. And so for Duda, we're in a unique position to do this research, right? Our customers are the agencies and not the SMBs. We already have these sites. There is no risk. There's no worry about ROI. We could have done this research, found nothing. And at the end of the day, all we wasted was, like 6 people's time, but it wasn't, it's not a bunch of money or anything, where an SMB or an agency trying to do this research themselves would have a monumental task ahead of them. And so that is, I think, the answer is, I think, just the stars aligned.
Yeah, and I really have to thank you. So I obviously I digested the entire study. It's incredible information. I use it in my sales call. I don't sell, I
Mhm.
consult. But it's
Yeah.
incredible information. So you ran a live test with the query best mechanic for a hybrid vehicle. Best mechanic for a hybrid vehicle. And Google surfaced an actual local business in the AI overview. Explain that test for our audience and what it told you about where local search is already heading.
Yeah, this one is my favorite example because I think it's very realistic on something a person would actually search for.
Yeah.
Not every I personally do drive a hybrid vehicle, which I stumbled across it. Not every mechanic is ready for that. You need sometimes specialized equipment to deal with it. And so when you conduct this search, and I've noticed this a lot along a lot of similar types of searches, when you conduct this kind of search that goes into a little more depth, rather than just best mechanic, you've added one modifier to it, you're almost guaranteed to get an AI overview now. And so for these local businesses, this is a complete game changer. It is pushing the local pack down. It is just giving 3 answers. And you're right, one of them is a Boulder-based mechanic who is very much specialized in this field. And so it's starting to, I think, very much tangentially show what we're talking about. That this is the change that's coming. It's no longer a big map of dots where customers go in, check the website, check the social media, do the research. You're being given someone immediately with a link to go check out their website, and Google is telling you, hey, this person does what you're looking for, and they're ready to help you right now. And they even give you a little context. And so I think that's just very transformative for these small local sites, these local businesses.
No, absolutely. And by the way, so I've done a bunch of searches using a similar example like you're using in your study for some of our clients. It's an eye opener. It's
Mhm.
also showed me that, we have continued to up our game because obviously AI is evolving at the speed of light. What has worked, even like 2 months ago may no longer work. So again, this study is an eye opener and it's definitely inspiring me to do like more and better, so that we can get our customers to show up for those kind of queries. So I'll throw a controversial take out there. I've been telling clients for, a couple of years or over a year now that AEO isn't a separate strategy. It's just SEO done correctly with AI in mind. Where does your research land on that question?
Yeah, I think your listeners might be surprised to hear this because I've been throwing around words like transformative so far. But I'm actually inclined to agree with you. What we saw, and you've looked at these numbers too, is what we would recommend an agency do looks a lot like local SEO. The difference is that, and I agree with you, it's happening with AI in mind. It's happening at scale. The optimizations you're doing are bigger. It's more content. That content is more specific. We're not recommending agencies go out and do something brand new that they've never done before or that they've never dabbled in. It's not an entirely new skill set. It's just building on what came before it. And oftentimes it's doing all the best practices, even the ones that you maybe for local businesses in certain markets could get away with not doing.
Absolutely. And so, by the way, over the last 2 years, we've been working on a system. It's called Micro SEO AI, which specifically addresses that need for local businesses or businesses of any size to actually get into these AI overviews, AI search, etc. We'll probably announce that a little bit down the road. It's not yet customer facing, but I mean, again, your study clearly showed the need for, I think, what we offer and have to offer out there. So I'm super thrilled to talk to you about this stuff. Let's talk about, so section 2, the methodology. This is basically what makes the study different, in my opinion. Let's talk about why the study is the most rigorous AEO data we have right now, and how Duda actually ran the analysis. So, most AEO content out there is anecdotal. Here's somebody's, case study. Here's a vibe. You ran statistical analysis on close to 900,000 paid sites and nearly 70 million AI crawler visits in a single month. Walk us through what made you and Elaine, I think she was the co-author or somebody involved in the study, commit to this scale.
Yeah, so you're right. Elaine and Hen were both our business intelligence team, and then Michael was on product marketing. And the four of us were like kind of the committee that worked on this. And the scale, of course, is because of what you said, that there's so much anecdotal evidence, that there's so much kind of vibe, almost something spiritual about the way people are talking about AI these days. And so we wanted to do something that we could run statistical analysis against, something that was meaningful and useful. And while we know that AI is a black box and that there probably isn't at the end of the day a perfect answer, we wanted to put ourselves in the best position possible to come up with something as close to a good answer as possible. And we are happy with what we found, and I don't think it would have worked if we had used a smaller cohort of sites.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you and your team started with dozens of hyper site properties that might impact AEO. How did you build that list, and were there any properties on it that surprised you when the data came back? Tell us a little bit more about that
Mhm.
aspect.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, that where I thought Duda was in a unique position to do this, I think this is exactly the reason why.
Hmm.
Because we host all of these sites, and we offer within the editor some kind of site traffic analysis with conversion rates that agencies can use. We have these parameters in place where we can see, okay, what we call them widgets. On WordPress, you might call them blocks. Um, we know what widgets have been installed on a site. We know which site properties have been completed, like the local schema or the business information. We know if they've installed any third-party apps. So we can look across all of the sites and we can say, hey, are these things installed? If they are, how many crawler visits are they getting? How does this look against the median site? All of these things. What is the median site? And so that was very helpful to go into it. However, you know, that's a lot of things. There are a lot of widgets. There are a lot of combinations of widgets. There's a lot of third-party apps. There's a lot of, and this exists in the research. We might get to this later. You can do something halfway too. You can fill out some of the schema. You can put a widget, but then not fill it out. So there are so many different possible ways that a site can come together. And so we had to start somewhere. And to the point you made earlier, we started with what we knew impacted local SEO. Because again, we kind of even entered with the same belief you had, that local AEO is just going to be some kind of extension of SEO with AI in mind.
Yeah.
And so we started with that. We looked for the existence of the local schema, which is something that we measured and saw had an impact. As well as we looked at, there's a specific Duda feature that allows you to integrate information in your site with Google Business Profile and sync them together. So we looked at the existence of that, which also helped. And we know those are things that help with local schema. However, we had to go beyond just those tried and true practices. We also wanted to look at what the market is saying. And so, what are these vibes people have been throwing out that they say may or may not help a website? And so, we looked at those things. We looked at the presence of reviews on a website, and that helped. We looked at the presence of content syndication tools, things like Uberall and Yext. These tools take information and move it to other websites like Yelp and stuff to keep it all in sync. And we've heard on the market that have it being consistent across the web is one of those things people always says is helping with AI search performance. And we found that that did help. But not everything had a statistically significant impact. So while there were dozens of things, not everything made into the research. The existence of like a map widget didn't really do anything. However, I would think for me personally, what surprised me most was the reviews. Just because it didn't seem like it was anything other than the content itself that improved the performance. We looked at reviews in many different forms. Duda itself has a reviews widget that you can drag and drop onto the side and add customer reviews. And then we have third-party apps on our app store that aggregate widgets from our reviews from other platforms like Google Business Profile and stuff. And both of these forms had very similar impacts. So it seemed to me that it was the content itself, the authority that the words brought by citing a customer is what made it perform better, which for me was a surprise. And I think that's kind of unique to AI search.
Interesting. And actually, so I should ask you before, but to those who are listening to this who may not know who Duda is, can you just very briefly explain what exactly is Duda and how do you differentiate from other platforms like Wix, Squarespace? Just very briefly.
Yeah, of course. So Duda is a website builder, I'm sure by now people have picked up on. What makes us different, though, uh, I would describe Duda as B2B to SMB, if that makes sense. We're a step removed from other website builders, where Wix, for example, is selling to the SMB directly. We sell to businesses who provide and enable those SMBs. So it's agencies or SaaS platforms, typically agencies. And so that puts us in a little bit of a different position where we're building a more professional tool for professionals who are creating a product for an end user that we don't talk to, the SMB. And so it's like
Awesome.
multi-site management, all that stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much. Um,
Yeah.
So use the AI crawl activity as a proxy for AI citation for people who don't live in this stuff every day. Like, why is that a defensible proxy? And what does the third-party research say about the link?
Yeah. Thankfully, this is something that at least OpenAI is very open about. They use quite a few different kinds of crawlers. One of them they call user fetch, which is the crawler visiting the site to, in a way, almost consider you for an answer. And so it tries to get the most up-to-date information as possible. It tries to get it immediately. It sends a unique crawler to do that. It's very specifically in that way. Other platforms are not as transparent about that. However, we can tell, third-party research does seem to point that they call these retrieval augmented generation systems, or they call them RAG. These RAG systems seem to all work in a similar way, even if the platforms aren't giving their crawlers different names, like OpenAI is kind enough to do. It does look like they all tend to visit the site to verify information before they recommend it. This isn't one-to-one. Every user fetch does not translate directly into a citation. At least we don't think so. It may, this is always changing. They're releasing new models constantly, but we don't think so. But it is a great proxy. And what we can very confidently say is as those numbers are going up, the number of recommendations and the number of citations are going up with it.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, Here's a question I want to surface. When you ran the model, were there any findings that contradicted what your team expected going in? Like the honest research moments are usually the more interesting,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, you got the right person for this out of the team. To be honest, I was the most pessimistic going into it. I was prepared to have to come up with a whole new thing we were going to do. I was not expecting to see anything meaningful. And so for me, the whole thing was a pleasant surprise. But that being said, there are things that caught me off guard. And I think the biggest one that shocked me, especially, and I'm glad we just gave that speech about what Duda is, what caught me off guard was that most of the SMB sites we studied had fewer than two of kind of what we identified as the key optimizations on their site at a time. And so that caught me off guard because the vast majority of these sites are being built by agencies. Um, that they wouldn't be as optimized. I expected them to be more optimized. In hindsight, though, that makes sense. I believe that in small markets, you would maybe not need to do as many optimizations to rank in Google search. If you're an agency representing like a mechanic in a small town, and maybe you're the only one that does hybrid cars, to stick back to that example, you probably do not need more than two of those key optimizations. And so I think that's maybe what AI is going to make different. But that caught me off guard from the research. I definitely thought that these sites would be more ready already.
Well, so here's a comment on that topic, right?
Yeah.
So BSM, Boulder SEO Marketing, we swim in our lane, right? We do
Hmm.
AI, SEO, and GEO. We don't do really pay-per-click. Like we do a little bit of web design, but we're not a web design agency. So as I've been doing SEO and this stuff for about 30 years now, what I learned over those decades is that web designers, they're really good at designing beautiful websites, they're usually not SEOs, right?
Hmm.
So I think there sometimes, if you want to make sure you get a beautiful website that also ranks in, traditional search and AI, it's probably not a bad idea to talk to somebody that's, you know, focusing on SEO. So that's just a general comment.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, that's probably what's happening. That's a great
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. All right. So let's tackle section 3. This is the last section for today. And then I'm going to quickly, before we finish here, I talk about the next sections that we're going to tackle in the second part of this podcast series. So this section is all about, it's the headline finding that belongs in every proposal. So the 3.2 times traffic, 2.7 form submissions, 2.5 click to call numbers, and the bonus finding that AEO optimization makes sites better for humans too. What a benefit, right? So the single strongest sentence in your entire study, the one I think every agency owner needs to memorize, is this: AI crawled sites generate 3.2 times more human traffic. AI crawled sites generate 3.2 times more human traffic, 2.7 times more form submissions, and 2.5 times more click to call events. Shawn, unpack what those numbers actually mean for a local business owner.
Yeah, so I will say right off the bat, this was kind of a light bulb moment for all
Yeah.
of us on the team. It's when local AEO kind of shifted into something that was an idea into something that kind of actually makes sense to invest time in. And I think that is what it means for a local business owner, right? Is that there's ROI here. When we are worried about where these organic leads are going to come from in the near future, this is evidence that perhaps this is where they're going to come from, that these websites are going to be recommended by AI systems in the very, very near future. And in fact, today, it's happening right now and it's happening under our noses. And there's a real opportunity here for those local businesses to get new leads in an untapped market.
I'll share some numbers from our business in a second
Yeah.
here. Uh, but you told me this was the bonus finding. You weren't expecting
Yeah.
it. The same things that get a site crawled by AI also make it perform better for humans. Why does that turn out to be true? And what does it mean for how we should be talking to clients about ROI?
Yeah. So like we talked about in the warm up for this, we only went in this research just trying to see if the sites could be optimized for AI search. We did not have in our mind any even semblance of an idea of what it looked like if when they were, like what that AI traffic did. This was a nice bonus for us. We just were not expecting to see that level of impact from optimizing. Conveniently, though, the information that AI is looking for is often the information people are looking for too. So, and I know I'm beating this horse to death with that hybrid car example, but that site pops up in that AI overview because that information exists on the site. For the customer, they're also looking for that information, and it appears on the site in a useful way. And this circles back to local SEO, but it's following those EEAT standards. It's authoritative. It's written in a way that's trustworthy. It's written in a way that provides experience that shows that, hey, this mechanic can do this thing. And so we're seeing this at a greater scale. We're seeing this on these sites in a way that likely covers all of their services or the useful ones that customers are searching for the most. It's got those reviews we talked about. It's got that integration with Google Business Profile that's up to date, which means the hours on the website are probably right. The address is probably right. I don't know about you, but like the worst thing you could do is go to a website and and it says the business is open. You get there and it's not.
Yeah.
Uh, and so these things that I was looking for, just as a consumer myself, are things that I'm looking for. for a website to be better and to be more useful.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is not rocket science, right?
No.
Clean your house, like clean your website, make things,
Yeah.
make sure it's consistent and all that good stuff. So here's where I get to share my own validation. So we have about 50 clients over at Boulder SEO Marketing. 90% are local service businesses. About 30 to 35% of our new leads now attribute to large language models directly. ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, etc. Last Thursday, I did 4 sales calls. 3 came from AI platforms. 3, 75%. So we're seeing on the lead flow side exactly what you're seeing in the platform data, and I don't predict that this number is going to go down. So you're spot on. All right. Last question for today's session. For the agency listening right now, whose client is asking, is AEO worth investing in? What's your 1 or 2 sentence answer they should be using?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think agencies are getting this question today. And if I were them, what I'd say is that not only is AEO worth investing in today because of this research we're seeing, because of this ROI, but these clients will regret it tomorrow if they don't do it because their competitors are going to do it and they're going to get ahead and they're going to have more of this content. They're going to be ready and you're going to have a hard time catching up.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. So in the next session, section 4, we're going to talk about the features that actually move the needle. And then the next section, who's actually doing the crawling. And then last but not least, what agencies and SMBs should actually do right now. Shawn, this has been very enlightening. Any last words of wisdom for today's session?
I can only tell them to listen to part 2.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. Again, my name is Chris Raulf. I'm an AI SEO expert, head of Boulder SEO Marketing. Today, I have with me Shawn Davis, head of content and communications at Duda. This concludes the first session of this 2-part series. I am already excited for part 2, and I can't wait to record the next session next week. Make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button. I talk to people like Shawn who really know their stuff, who share really great information. As always, stay safe and healthy, and we'll catch you next time. Shawn, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.